She walked into his office and slapped a report on his desk. Not placed it, not set it down carefully the way everyone else did when they approached Seo-jin. She slapped it, flat palm. The sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Every person in that room stopped breathing. Seo-jin, the man who controlled half of Seoul's underground, who had made grown men weep just by entering a room, looked up slowly from his chair. His eyes were the kind of dark that had no warmth in them. At least, that's what people said. Sonia didn't flinch. "Your quarterly projections are wrong," she said. "Whoever formatted these doesn't understand basic compounding. I'll need 48 hours to fix it." Dead silence. Then, barely visible, gone before anyone could confirm it, the corner of his mouth moved. "You have 24, he said, and he looked back down at his other papers as if she had already left. She hadn't. 24 is not enough. He didn't look up. "Then you should have started already." That was day one. That was 3 years ago. And Seo-jin, the most feared man in Seoul, had been quietly, secretly, devastatingly in love with her ever since. He never said a word. Not one. Because men like him don't get to love people like her and leave them unbroken. That was what he told himself every single morning. For 3 years. But tonight she walked into a restaurant on the arm of another man. And something in his chest that had been very still for a very long time started to move. If you have ever loved someone in silence, so long the silence became a prison, stay with me. Because this story is about to hurt you in the best possible way. Subscribe right now and drop a comment. Are you Team Seo-jin or Team Sonia? Let's get into it. Here is what you need to know about Seo-jin. He was not born powerful. He was built that way, by loss, by survival, by a childhood that ended at 12 years old when the only person who loved him was taken. After that, he was raised inside the Korean syndicate by a man who repeated one lesson every single day. Attachment is a liability. Want nothing. Need no one. Seo-jin listened. He learned. He became so controlled, so unreadable, so completely sealed, that his own lieutenants placed bets on whether he actually had a heartbeat. Then Sonia walked in and slapped a report on his desk. Her mother was from Lagos, her father from Busan. She grew up between two worlds, navigating languages, cultures, and the particular loneliness of never being fully claimed by either place. She learned early how to read a room, how to stand in uncomfortable spaces without shrinking. She was brilliant with numbers and even more brilliant with people. She saw things others missed. She noticed the way people's eyes moved before their mouths did, which is exactly how she started to notice Seo-jin. Not the performance of him, not the power and the silence and the expensive suits. The small things, the things no one else seemed to see. 3 months into working for him, she noticed her coffee was already on her desk every morning. Exactly how she liked it. Oat milk, no sugar, 1 shot of hazelnut. From a specific cafe 3 blocks away that she had only mentioned once in passing to a colleague. Seo-jin never mentioned it. She never asked, but it appeared every single morning without fail. 6 months in, a male client made a comment about her during a meeting. Something low, something dismissive, the kind of thing she had learned to absorb and keep moving. She absorbed it. She kept moving. 2 days later, that client's contract was terminated without explanation, and he was on a flight back to Busan before the week was out. Seo-jin never mentioned that either. A year in, she worked late alone during a building lockdown. She assumed she was the only one still there. At 2 in the morning, she walked to the elevator and past his office. The light was on. He was at his desk. He looked up when she passed, said nothing, and looked back down. Just present. Just there. As if being in the same building while she was alone in it was something he had decided, quietly, was his job. She started keeping a mental list. The coffee, the terminated contract, the late nights. The way his eyes always found her first when he entered a room, even when he pretended they didn't. The private chef who appeared one Thursday with jollof rice that tasted so specifically like her grandmother's Lagos recipe that she had stood in the kitchen and felt her eyes burn. She never proved any of it, but she knew, and knowing, without hearing, had started to feel like slow torture. 3 years. That was how long she had been collecting evidence of a man who loved her in every language except the one that mattered. 3 years of coffee and terminated contracts and late nights and jollof rice that tasted like home. 3 years of almost. 3 years of nearly. 3 years of standing close enough to touch and never being touched. She was done. It was her best friend Amara who said it plainly. They were on a video call, Lagos skyline glowing behind Amara's head, and Sonia had spent 40 minutes going in circles. He did this, but then he said nothing, but then he did that, but then silence again, until Amara held up one hand and said, "Sonia, stop. You are a brilliant woman behaving like a confused girl. Make him jealous. I'm not doing that. You are already doing nothing, and it is working exactly as well as you'd expect." Sonia was quiet. "Daniel Yoon has been asking you to dinner for 4 months," Amara continued. "He is handsome. He is harmless. Use him. That's not fair to Daniel. Daniel is a grown man who knows what he's doing. Say yes. Go to dinner. With a red dress. Let Seo-jin's people see you. And then watch what happens to a man who has been pretending he feels nothing." Sonia said yes to Daniel the next morning. She told herself it was strategy. She told herself she was in control. She told herself she knew exactly how this would go. Seo-jin would react. She would finally have her answer. Everything would become clear. She was wrong about all three. Daniel picked her up at 7. The restaurant was beautiful, candlelit, quiet, the kind of place that made conversation feel important. And Daniel was genuinely good company. Funny. Warm. He leaned across the table and said, "You know, I've been trying to get your attention for months. I was starting to think you were untouchable." She laughed. She relaxed. She almost forgot why she was there. She got home at 10:30 feeling guilty and confused and strangely sad. She sat on her couch in the red dress and thought, maybe Amara was wrong. Maybe Seo-jin simply didn't feel what she thought he felt. Maybe she had been building a cathedral out of coffee cups and coincidences. Maybe her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. He knows. That was it. Nothing else. She stared at it for a long time. Then she typed back, "Who is this?" No reply came. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she walked into the office and felt it immediately. The temperature of the room was different. His door, always slightly open, was closed. Her desk had been physically moved. It was now directly outside his office, 3 feet from his door, facing it like a checkpoint. His assistant was reorganizing the floor plan with the energy of someone who had been given very specific instructions at a very early hour and had not been invited to have opinions about them. "What is happening?" Sonia asked. "Restructuring," the assistant said, without making eye contact. She sat down at her relocated desk. 8 minutes later, his door opened. Seo-jin stepped out in a dark suit, coffee in hand. Not hers, his own, and stopped when he saw her sitting there. As if he was surprised, even though he had clearly ordered this exact arrangement. "Good morning," he said. "You moved my desk. The floor plan needed adjusting. My desk specifically. Coincidence." She stared at him. He looked back at her with that face, that perfectly sealed, unreadable face. And then he said, very casually, "Cancel your plans with Daniel Yoon." The air left the room. I beg your pardon? End of quarter reports. I need you available. He turned and walked back into his office. Now here is the part nobody saw coming. Not Sonia, not his lieutenants, not even a man who had watched Seo-jin for decades and thought they understood him completely. That same morning, while Sonia sat at her relocated desk trying to process what had just happened, one of Seo-jin's most senior men walked into his office, closed the door, and slid a photograph across the desk. It was a photograph of Sonia, taken outside her apartment building. The previous night, while she was out with Daniel, someone inside the Korean had been watching her, not on Seo-jin's orders, without his knowledge, and whoever it was had been watching her for a very long time. Seo-jin looked at the photograph for a long time without speaking. Then he looked up at the man who had brought it, Park Hyun, his most senior lieutenant, 15 years in the syndicate, someone he had trusted without question since he was 20 years old. "Where did you get this?" Seo-jin said. Not a question. A temperature. Park Hyun didn't blink. It came from Lee's faction. They've been tracking her for 6 weeks. They know she matters to you. They're planning to use her. 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and he hadn't known. 6 weeks, and Sonia had been walking to her car, going to dinner, living her life, completely unaware that dangerous men had identified her as the one crack in Han Seo-jin's wall. Because of his silence, because he had spent 3 years pretending she was nothing to him, and it had protected her from nothing. They had seen it anyway, in the coffee, in the terminated contracts, in the way his eyes moved when she entered a room. They had read every single letter of a love he had never spoken out loud, and they had written her name on a target. He stood up slowly. How many men does Lee have on her? 3. Rotating shifts. Remove them. Park Hyun paused. If we move on Lee's men, he'll know we know. It escalates. I know. It could fracture the entire East Faction alliance. 3 years of positioning gone. Seo-jin picked up his jacket. I know. Seo-jin, is she worth burning that? He stopped at the door. He didn't turn around. Remove them tonight. All 3. And put 4 of our own on her building. She doesn't see them. She doesn't know. He opened the door. And find out how long Lee has actually been watching. Not 6 weeks. Go back further. Find a real number. He walked out, past Sonia's desk. She looked up at him, still irritated about the desk relocation, still processing the Daniel comment from that morning. She opened her mouth to say something sharp. He stopped, looked at her, really looked, the way he almost never let himself. She felt it land differently this time. Not his usual controlled surveillance. Something rawer, something that looked almost like fear. Are you all right? She asked, before she could stop herself. Don't go anywhere alone tonight, he said quietly. Take a car, not the subway. Then he walked away before she could respond. She sat very still. The irritation dissolved. Something colder and more serious replaced it. Because Sonia was brilliant at reading people. And what she had just seen on Han Seo-jin's face was not the expression of a man managing a business problem. It was the expression of a man who was frightened for someone he loved. She called Amara that evening. Something is wrong, she said. Not relationship wrong. Actually wrong. What do you mean? He looked at me today like I was already hurt. Like he was looking at something he was terrified of losing. Amara was quiet for a moment. Sonia, maybe this went further than we planned. I think it went further than either of us understood. She didn't sleep again that night. She lay in her apartment listening to the city outside and thinking about a man who had reorganized an entire building floor, killed a business alliance, and moved her desk, all before 9 in the morning, because she had dinner with someone else. She thought about the coffee. Every morning for 3 years. The terminated contract. The late nights. The jollof rice. She thought about his face at the door, just now, cracked open and terrified and real. And she thought, what if she had been wrong about what she was doing? She had started this to force his hand, to get an answer. But what if the answer had always been there, written in every small silent act, and she had simply refused to believe it could be love without the word attached? What if Han Seo-jin had been saying it, loudly, constantly, in every way he knew how, and she had been waiting for a language he had genuinely never learned? The guilt hit her like cold water. But before she could sit with it, her phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up. Silence on the line. Then a voice she didn't recognize. Low, calm, deliberate. Tell Han Seo-jin. His silence bought you 3 years. His feelings just ended them. You have 72 hours to disappear, or we'll make you disappear for him. The line went dead. Her hands were shaking when she called him. It rang twice. Sonia. Just her name. The way he said it, like he'd been waiting for this exact call, like some part of him already knew, made her chest tighten. Someone just called me, she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. They said I have 72 hours to disappear. They said your feelings ended my safety. She paused. Seo-jin. What is happening? Silence. 3 seconds. 5. Then, where are you right now? My apartment. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm coming. He was there in 11 minutes. She counted. When she opened the door, he stepped inside, scanned every corner of the room in 3 seconds the way people do when danger is a professional habit, then turned and looked at her standing in the middle of her living room in an oversized sweater with her arms crossed, trying to look composed and failing completely. Something in him broke open. Are you hurt? He said. No. Are you scared? A beat. Yes. He crossed the room in 4 steps and stood directly in front of her. Close. Closer than he had ever allowed himself. She could see the tension in his jaw, the controlled fury behind his eyes. Fury at himself, she realized. Not at her. Never at her. I'm sorry, he said. Low. Rough. Like the words had been dragged up from somewhere very deep. This is my fault. My feelings made you target. I thought if I never said it, never showed it, you would be invisible to them. I thought silence was the same as safety. She looked up at him. How long? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Since day one. Since you slapped that report on my desk and told me I was wrong. 3 years. 3 years he had carried this alone, rearranged his entire world around protecting her, and said nothing. She felt the full weight of it land. You should have told me, she whispered. I know. I spent 3 years thinking I was imagining it. I drove myself half mad, trying to prove something I already knew. I went to dinner with Daniel because I just needed you to show me it was real, that I wasn't building something out of nothing. His jaw tightened. Daniel Yoon. Don't. She shook her head. Don't do that. You don't get to be angry about Daniel when you chose silence. I didn't go because I wanted him. I went because I was desperate for proof. That's on you. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, you're right. She blinked. She had not expected that. You're right, he said again. I made a decision for you. I decided you were safer not knowing. I decided what you could and couldn't handle. I controlled the situation and called it protection. It wasn't. He exhaled slowly. It was fear. I was afraid of what I would become if I let myself have this. I've already burned a 15-year alliance today because of one photograph of you outside your building. I moved your desk because you had dinner with another man. Sonia, I am not a proportionate person when it comes to you. I never have been. She stared at him. You burned an alliance today? It was necessary. Seo-jin. I would do it again. The room was very quiet. Outside, Seoul hummed and glittered and moved, completely indifferent to the two of them standing in a small apartment while 3 years of silence finally collapsed. She reached up and put her hand flat against his chest. She felt his breath stop. I'm not asking you to be safe, she said softly. I'm not asking you to be simple or easy or uncomplicated. I know exactly what you are. I've known for 3 years. She looked straight at him. I'm asking you to stop deciding what's best for me. And just ask. He looked down at her hand on his chest, then at her face. Then, barely above a whisper, have dinner with me. She almost smiled. You have 24 hours to plan it. She stepped back and picked up her bag. He turned to watch her move toward the kitchen to make tea. Calm, unhurried, completely at home in the apartment he had been secretly protecting for 3 years. And Han Seo-jin, who had built an empire on wanting nothing, stood in her living room and felt, for the first time in his life, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He wasn't fixed. He wasn't suddenly soft or simple or safe. There were still men to deal with, a faction to dismantle, a war inside his organization that was just beginning. But for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't fighting it alone, and neither was she. Some love stories announced themselves loudly. This one had been whispering for 3 years, in coffee cups and terminated contracts and jollof rice that tasted like home. It just needed one person brave enough to finally make some noise until the silence broke. If this story hit different, share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe for more Afro-Asian love stories that nobody else is telling. And drop a comment below. Did Seo-jin wait too long, or was the timing exactly right? I want to know what you think. And if you want a part 2, because there's a war inside the Korean that is just getting started, and Sonia is right in the middle of it, let me know below. See you in the next one.